Okay, hello everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to our Dare Mighty Things panel today. We're going to be talking about, among other things, a documentary in development called Coming Home, Fight for Legacy, a film about the World War II women Air Force service pilots, otherwise known as the Wasp. My name is Jill Myers, and I am so honored to be moderating this live event today. So a bit about me. We're supposed to have, can you see the slides? I can't see. Kelly, do we have the visuals? There we go. So I've been passionate about aviation since I was a kid and earned my pilot's license at age 17. And just to give a little bit of a list, I'm an Air Force veteran, aerospace engineer, as I said, licensed private pilot. I'm an advocate for STEM careers, in particular women in STEM and women in aviation and aerospace. I am a professional speaker, have been a consultant, I've done quite a bit. And I've been connected to these amazing women, Mattia Correll and Hillary Prentice, since 2016, which are the top two large photos, when I was extremely fortunate to help plan and MC an amazing fundraiser that we held in Carlsbad, California, to honor the Wasp. It was an amazing panel. And we'll talk about that all maybe later. But more importantly, let me introduce our amazing panelists. So first, we have Mattia Correll. Mattia has a long and very impressive career in both film and television. She wrote, directed, and produced the Academy Award-nominated short film Cadillac Dreams. She also directed, co-wrote, and produced her first feature-length film, Behind the Red Door, starring Kiefer Sutherland, Kira Sedgwick, and Stockard Channing. And I just want to insert that it's a phenomenal film. Everyone should go look it up. Mattia's TV credits include some series you might have heard of: Doogie Howser MD, The Wonder Years, The West Wing, and Army Wives. When Mattia is not working on Red Door Films projects, she's a graduate film instructor at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California. And we will hear from Mattia in a little bit about her connection to the Wasp and kind of why we're all here. Next is Hillary Prentice. Hillary has been with Mattia since 2015 and is producing the Coming Home documentary, as well as their dramatic TV series, Fly Girls. Hillary recently collaborated with Mattia on both the Emmy-nominated HBO film, The Tale, and on Fabrice Joubert's film, Safety. Hillary is producing Emmy-winning writer Chuck Sklar's first feature film, Caught Stealing, with Chris Rock. And last but not least, Molly Merriman. Molly's an associate professor in the School of Peace and Conflict Studies at Kent State University. She's also a filmmaker and historian and has directed and produced 9 documentaries that have been broadcast in the US and the UK, which have screened at academic meetings, museums, galleries, and universities around the world. Molly is the author of the book, Clipped Wings, and is also the historic research producer for our documentary, Coming Home. So this is a phenomenal panel. We are beyond excited to be here. So let's talk about this documentary, Coming Home. I'd like the three of you just to chat about where the documentary is in its post-production phase of development, and also kind of how are those donations going?
Okay, Hillary, take it away.
I'll jump in. We are in post-production, working at the moment on a proof of concept, taking the work that we have done with an editor for the last 6 months and streamlining it into a larger proof of concept for networks and studios and investors. If you're interested, email me. We have also just applied to the National Endowment for the Humanities for a post-production grant. We are raising funds for our World War II aviation aerial photography shoot. This will give our audience the visceral experience of what it was like to fly these planes. It's very different than flying today. So we want people to understand how exciting and dangerous and how incredible it was what these women were doing and pushing aviation forward, not only ending the war, but launching aviation as we know it today. So check out our campaign page, email me with any questions. And we are just thrilled to bring this series, this Dare Mighty Things series, to the public while we work behind the scenes with our editor on post.
So let me just add to that. First of all, thank you, Jill, for doing this for us. And we've had a wonderful relationship, all of us, and it continues to be productive and more than that. I just wanted to add that some of our, I guess, fans have asked, sort of what's the delay? And I think we should add the COVID year and a half, or is it going to be almost 2 years soon, has really delayed a lot of our work, which hasn't slowed us down, but it means that we have still some things to film, some interviews that we may have done on Zoom and we'd like to film in person.
And last but not least, I'll just say the documentary process, the filmmaking process is fascinating, and it can be a little bit of a marathon. We went out and we filmed these women beginning in 2015, and we weren't sure exactly what we were going to get. You never really know when you're making a documentary film. You just go out and film everything. And then once we got back, into our office and looked at everything, which takes a long time, by the way, to go through all the interview footage and transcripts. And I mean, I won't bore you with all the tedious work, but it's quite intense. We start putting the pieces together, trying to find the story. And this is a very complicated story. We're not only following our main characters and their individual stories, we're looking at the larger Wasp story. And then we're also, because of Mattia's vision, putting this in context of our early female aviators who came before the Wasp. Beginning with the great air races. There were women of all races. We have someone coming on our Dare Mighty Things panel who will be talking about Bessie Coleman, who was an African-American woman in the 20s. So our women have really been there, as Mattia likes to say, from the beginning. And we want to create a very complex piece that's also bite-sized for our YouTube audience, our high schoolers who watch YouTube on their phones in between class. We want to create something that they can latch on to and be inspired by and want to watch, as opposed to, falling asleep.
Well, it's great that you're all going back as well. For those that are listening and watching that may not know, the first woman to get her pilot's license was in France, Baroness de la Roche, in 1910. So women have been flying for quite some time prior to the Wasp. But them being the first real military pilots really set the stage for a lot of women to follow. So Mattia, your connection to the Wasp is one of my favorite stories on earth. So why don't you share with us? I'll never forget when you first told me when I first met you 6 years ago. Why don't you tell us about your connection to the Wasp and how all of this started?
Okay, and it really started because I made a mistake, so I'll just start there. It's one of those wonderful mistakes. Just the short version, hopefully. After my mother passed, and I was quite young, and we went through her things, which really amounted to like a hat box, right? The hat box with the zipper. And in it, I found 2 photographs. And one of these photographs that you'll see here I was blown away by, because I had no idea what it was. I had no idea who these women were, and I had no idea why my mother was there. Now, my mother, we put a little ink circle around her, because what did we know? We were young. We didn't know it was like Anyway, I was intrigued by this picture because of how these women look, that they look strong, they look confident, and they're in basically, I think, in conductor uniforms, right? They had no uniforms for these women. This was the Massachusetts Women's Defense Corps. So it was a volunteer group in World War II, because Boston is a harbor city. They needed people to to keep track or keep an eye on what was happening offshore, and also plane spotters, of which my mother was one. And if you look at this photograph, you'll see some of them have boots, some of them still have their little high heel shoes, a lot of them still have their lipstick on. And the other point to make is that at this time, you never saw images of groups of women. We didn't have a women's basketball team or American soccer team, Team USA or anything like that. So to see women who were together in a group and standing strong was, to me, phenomenal. And it spoke volumes. And the thing was, I went to research this and I could find nothing on these women, nothing. In fact, later when they made a commemorative day in Massachusetts for these women, I was told that there's one box of like archival material that somebody found. Okay, so really nothing. So that led me to just keep researching, which brought me to women who weren't looking for planes, spotting for planes, they were flying them. And I was again intrigued by the fact that women, as Hillary said, have always been there. And it seemed to me that their story was a really core story in which to jump off from regarding women in World War II.
That's fantastic. And
Okay,
we're so glad that you went on that journey, Mattia, trust me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mattia.
No, I think that was it. In fact, I thought my mother was a WAC. That was the mistake. I thought she was Women Army Corps, and she wasn't. It was a volunteer defense corps, and she probably would have been too young to join the corps. Anyway, which is why I kept researching and researching. So I'll leave it there.
Fantastic. So Mattia, why don't you and Molly talk about Molly's interaction here and involvement?
Yes, and can I add just Molly? I'm so sorry. This is me not used to speaking live to anybody. Actually, the thing that this picture gave as a filmmaker. Now I'm speaking as a filmmaker. Is that there was a story there, that you could see a story of not just one woman but all these women. And there was a narrative that I had never known about or heard about, and that's what led to the deep dive into who these women were. And that can bring us to Molly. Molly did a phenomenal piece of work called Clipped Wings. I think we have a picture. No, I guess we showed it already. Anyway, so you see why I'm not moderating this panel. So, hey, I am who I am. Okay, so Molly, dear, I'd like to ask you a question. Is like, how did you first get interested in the Wasp and the Wasp story?
Yeah, thank you, Mattia. And like you, I have that parental connection. My parents were of the World War II greatest generation. And I cannot remember the first time I heard about the Wasp. My mother was a civilian nurse who was treating a lot of wartime injuries. And my father was a B-25 mechanic. There he is with his whole group. Obviously, you can't pick him out of the group, but he served in China and was with the 14th Air Force, what became of the Flying Tigers in effect. Wow. I knew his stories of being in the Army Air Forces, and I know at some point when I was little, I had asked about women, and my parents had told me that there were a group of women pilots who flew civilian missions, and they actually had told me that there were two from my hometown of Alliance, Ohio, and I actually had the opportunity to meet both of them for the book. The way I got, I think, more interested was that I knew of this, but no one else did, and from time to time I would have those those conversations with friends about what girls can and cannot do. And my friends didn't know about these women. They were not in any of the history books. There were, at the time that I wrote my book, there were a couple of books that Wasp had written themselves, but there really wasn't any kind of definitive history about them. So then flash forward to 1992, when I was starting my doctoral program. And as it happened, a filmmaking partner of mine, Tom Bauman, he and I heard that there was going to be this event around the Wasp. And so we decided to go film them. And we attempted, this is I think a full circle story, because back then we attempted to do a documentary film and we couldn't find anyone who wanted to fund it. We were told, well, that's not an interesting story. There's, the Wasp appear in some other documentaries. So there's just really no reason to do it. So we couldn't find funding. And I did do the book, but it always bothered me that I never got to complete that documentary, because my book is more of an overall analysis that examines why it was that they were quite wrongly disbanded before the war's end and had to fight later for veteran status. But I still wanted to tell those personal stories. And so when Mattia and Hillary reached out to me, I was just so excited to get to join this team, because I feel like, we're making something right that I couldn't on my own make right.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Molly.
I just want to jump in, Bill, as a producer. I just want to jump in and let our audience know that there has never been a feature-length documentary about the Wasp. That's something that's special and unique about our project. There have been short forms, and the other point is that there has never been a wide theatrical release about the Wasp, and also about our early female aviators. So we're very excited to bring this forward, and we certainly feel an enormous amount of pressure to make this an incredible film, but we want it to feel like a narrative. That's also very important to us. So it will not feel like a history lesson. You'll really live and breathe as these women did when they were flying in before the 40s, during the 40s, and we'll bring it into the present.
And, I can jump off from there, Jill, to talk about when we initially thought about the Wasp and doing that story. We thought of it, and we still think of it, obviously, as a TV dramatic narrative, as a dramatic series, that you can't tell something like this in 2 hours. You have to give it its due. Part of, and we got pushback. We even then we got
even
pushback.
Still today.
Yeah, even still. And everybody says it looks like a slam dunk. And so our feeling was that we had filmed all these interviews initially to be part of special features for the narrative, the dramatic series, that now we could make something really powerful and make a story that was less a history lesson, but more about who these women were, what they felt, what they believed in, what they fought for. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in.
No, that's great, Mattia. And I think, the combination of the documentary and in the future, the miniseries is going to be just incredibly powerful to educate and raise awareness, because, and I don't know if you both remember, but, so many people, even in the community of aviation, don't know about the Wasp. And when we held that fundraiser in Carlsbad, I think we sold like 170 tickets, and the place was packed. And there was a couple that was picking up an airplane that day, and they looked at me and they're like, who are all these people? And we had, I think, 3 or 4 of the Wasp women there. And, these people just said, Wasp? We never heard of a Wasp. And, standing in an airport, picking up their airplane. So, it's just, what you're doing is so critically important, and I'm saying that as someone who's been in aviation for over 40 years. So, just can't thank you both, all 3 of you, enough for what you're doing. I just want to interject real quick for the folks watching, that the background you see on all of our Zoom screens, is of Avenger Field, which is where the Wasp trained in Sweetwater, Texas. So you'll get a lot more information about that when the documentary is out in the world. So Hillary, let's talk about your background in producing and how you got into this this enterprise and what your interest is in in producing all of these amazing pieces.
Sure. Well, I'll try to also keep it short and sweet.
Yeah, I'm watching the clock too, by the way.
Because I could go on. But I really do feel like this is a project of a lifetime. And I'm so grateful to Mattia for taking a chance on me and letting me join her and building this movement in a way. It's kind of a movement now at this point. It's a long journey, but I guess, you know, like they say about baseball, Tom Hanks said it in A League of Their Own, you know, baseball's hard. And if it wasn't, everybody would be doing it, which brings me to A League of Their Own and the narrative and how women are portrayed in film. And growing up, I was an athlete. I came up after Title IX, so I definitely reaped the benefit of women's athletics transforming. I had posters of the U.S. Olympic basketball team on my wall, and but in our team dinners the nights before games, we watched Hoosiers. Movies like Stand By Me, those were the films that resonated, where they were groups of boys playing. And as girls, we didn't have movies like that. And we didn't even really have TV shows like that. And women have always, unfortunately, been portrayed. I mean, one of our very own Wasp in one of her interviews talks about her concern as a 20-year-old going to Avenger Field in Sweetwater, Texas for training, that her feeling was that women were a bunch of cats. And she was worried about being with a group of women. And, you know, unfortunately, that's what we're told and so oftentimes portrayed in TV and film. And I like my friends who are boys. I was definitely a tomboy and played kick the can and all of that with the boys, but I loved my girls. I loved my best friends who were girls. And I'm so thrilled to bring this story to light. The last piece I'll say is I was a history major at Dartmouth College. And when I met Mattia and I found out about this, I was so mad. I was just so mad that I didn't know about these women. And I kind of had this feeling, which maybe young women have today who are younger than me now. Maybe they kind of feel like, well, now women have like evolved, you know, so now women are a certain thing. Now they can be CEOs and now they can be presidents of countries. But really women always were these incredibly powerful creatures doing these things throughout history. And by meeting Mattia, you know, I've now gone back and I looked at the Civil War. Mattia pointed out to me to look at the women involvement in the Civil War, the American Revolution, the founding of this country. Women have always been there, and as well as minorities. And for me, it is so important that we understand our past. I think the better we understand our past, we can be a better society today.
And I think what that points to too, Hillary, is that all women have always wanted to contribute to their country. They just have. They just haven't been allowed to. But they have, as they did in World War II and even before in World War I. I can't think of their names right now. The operator girls. Anyway, Molly, maybe you remember. But I think it's important to note that. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. That this idea of sisterhood, this idea that sisterhood was born out of these groups of women, that they didn't have that women were so isolated, right? The housewife, the teacher, the nurse, they never had a chance to really to get to know each other, to answer what, and then of course, Shirley comes full around to say that they all took care of each other. And that's opportunity. That's circumstance and opportunity that was given them to really find out what that meant to be sisterhood, no matter race and religion. As B says, that there were 6 women in a bay, 6 different religions, and they all got along. And I think that's for me, what's wonderful, and I'm sure what's still frustrating, what Hillary's saying, because it seems like we have evolved, and yet we get thrown back, and we feel like we go forward, and then we don't. And that's part of what we hope the power of this documentary will do, because it paints a broad stroke, right? It's not, as Hillary said, it's not just these group of women. It really does. It's a jumping off point to deal with women in the armed forces. There were over 350. We're not going to deal with 350,000 of them, but there were over 350,000 women in the Air Force, and 310. Well, I have it right here. I'm reading it in the U.S. aircraft industry. And I think it's the family of women. I think that's important. And anyway, I'll stop.
Yeah, it's really important, Mitzi. I'm glad you raised all those issues. The point I want to make really quick is that we have come a long way, but the percentages of women in all of these fields are still, I'll just say dreadfully low. For those just joining us, if anyone's been new on the Facebook Live, I'm talking to Mattia Correll, Hillary Prentice, and Molly Merriman about Red Door Films documentary Coming Home. I also want to mention that if you have questions for us, we're going to take them in a little bit. So go ahead and put them in the Facebook Live in the comments, and we will get to them in just a short time here. So Molly, I would love for you to talk about this collaboration that's happening between Red Door Films and Kent State that is really looking to create a living legacy between the Wasp veterans and future generations of aviators, aerospace professionals, aeronautics professionals, and the like. So I'm going to turn it over to you for a bit.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about this. I think that something that Mattia and Hillary didn't realize when they invited me to join was that they're actually getting a large part of the Kent State family involved in this documentary, and then our legacy project that is connecting this to education. Something that is somewhat unusual about Kent State University is that not only are we quite a robust undergraduate and graduate university, a research institution, but we also have a flight school and an airfield. And in fact, the airfield that we have at Kent State University, 2 of the WASP that I interviewed actually had done their civil aeronautics training at that field. So there is a real grounded history that ties the WASP into Kent State. But Kent State is also a university that, because of the legacy of the May 4th shootings that happened as part of the Vietnam protests, we are, I think, more conscious than many other universities about what happens with war and the complexities of understanding something so monumental. And so there was a certain point in the process where I just called a meeting with our dean of the College of Aeronautics and Engineering and said, hey, I'm part of this project, and don't you think that we could utilize this to encourage girls and young women to get involved with careers, not just to become pilots, but there's a whole robust career field. My father was a plane mechanic. There's a lot of things that are involved in this career. And initially, my thoughts were to get college age women interested. And when the deans sat me down, they were like, we actually need a more robust pipeline, because part of the issue is that girls and also any underrepresented people, racial minorities, first generation people, are often not getting the the training that they need in mathematics and science, because they don't think there's career possibilities for them there. And so, what we are working on is a K through 12 educational, I guess, project, for the want of a better word, because we're going to be developing curriculum. We're going to be doing educational tie-ins that can be used at museums, and having a lot of like playful tie-ins as well, to really start encouraging girls and boys who never saw themselves in aeronautics to think about this career field, and to get the basic skills. And so, so some of what we're doing, Hillary had mentioned that when you shoot a documentary, you end up with hundreds of hours of footage that don't make it into that feature length film. And so what we'll be doing is taking elements of these interviews, so for example, if a pilot is talking about how as a Wasp, she had to, while she's flying, do geometric calculations and line it up with the map that the printed map that's strapped to her leg. That's high level skill there. And so we can take that interview and then tie it in with lessons about geometry. And our idea is to provide these lesson plans and motivational exercises, so that teachers across the country, because there's such a variance of educational requirements and different expectations for meeting those core requirements, that teachers will have this, and they can use it, and they can customize it, and then they can be tied in with the film. And we're going to be launching this in conjunction with the release of the film, so that we can use the excitement and the energy that comes with a lovely narrative film to link in with these educational goals. Because I think it's vital. And I know when I interviewed Wasp, they wanted to see their legacy extend beyond their lives. They wanted to see young women and girls see a future that didn't exist when the Wasps were imagining their future. So yeah. I think it's one of the things I'm very excited about with the Red Door Films is that this is a group of filmmakers who really have taken the legacy to heart. This isn't just a vanity project. It's not a corporate project. Everyone that is working on this film really cares about the legacy and really cares about inspiring, future generations of girls.
Well, thank you so much, Molly. I personally love what you're doing on the education and all of you bringing that together, because I'm someone who's been mentoring young women, actually women of multiple ages, but I've been mentoring women in aviation for more than 20 years. And I've actually also found that the education piece can be a gap. There's a lot of teachers who don't know at any level of school how to bring aviation into the classroom and how to link what you learn in school with the practicality of flying or being, a traffic controller, or any, again, I could go on and on about all the different fields. So I really, really love what you're doing there, and love that you all have decided to pull these two concepts together.
And Jill, you mentioned too that there's a shortage of pilots, and that's been in the industry, commercial pilots, and that's
yes. There's I could talk about it all day, but there's been a massive pilot shortage announced really formally since 2016 when Boeing did a big study. But all that to say, there is going to be a need for literally, I believe it's 690,000 pilots by the year 2025 or something, 2035. And if you look at the pipeline of who's in training, there's not nearly enough to fill
our work cut out for us.
That gap. Yeah. So, the more we can do to inspire women, especially, just for those that don't know, only 6% of all licensed pilots in the world are women. 16% of air traffic controllers. My aerospace engineering field is about 13%. Count them, 2% of aircraft mechanics are women. And a lot of it is they just don't know that these fields are open to them. They don't know how to get there. So, you know, bringing the Kent State piece in and the inspiration of the filmmaking, it's a beautiful partnership, if I may say so. And I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, and if I can interject, Jill, because I think, you know, I share that excitement, and I think that, you know, at Kent State, like we have Captain Stephanie Johnson, for example, that was the first African-American woman to graduate from our flight training program, who then went on to become the first African-American woman to fly for a major airline, and is currently a captain at Delta Airlines. And so, you know, we really, you know, do I think at Kent State take very seriously that notion of letting people see others, that so that they can imagine themselves in these roles, and that imagination is so vital to make these next steps, and to realize that you should focus on those classes. And there's so many great mentoring programs, some of which you're part of, Jill, like you know, that encourage, you know, girls to get involved with aviation.
Yeah, definitely. So we do have a comment really quick on Facebook for you, Molly. Hilda writes that her daughter is the same, and asking everyone in aviation at events if they've heard of the Wasp, and most people have said they've not. But Hilda definitely hit on a nice point. She said, my daughter's determined to teach everyone who they were and who Fifinella represents. So I want to hold up, this is my Fifinella pin, which was given to me by one of the Wasps, by the way. And if you don't know, Fifinella was the mascot of the Wasp. I'm sorry, this doesn't work very good with the background. So thank you.
Signed by Walt Disney. And we would love support from Abigail Disney's production company.
Yes, let's get that going.
And
so go ahead, Mattia.
yeah, I think, are you introducing the clip? Because you made,
yeah, because
it was a great
actually, we
segue.
need to make sure we have time for Q&A. So I'm going to turn over to Hillary. And we're going to.
Sure. I just want to say that the partnership that we've been discussing is called Pathways to Flight. We have been approaching corporate airlines. We have a nonprofit fiscal sponsor. And if you have connections to United, Delta, Boeing, Lockheed, any corporation out there involved in the aviation space or the aerospace, get them in touch with us, share this video with them. This is an incredible opportunity for their companies to be a part of not only a widely released documentary film, but a educational curriculum that will be rolling out across the country. So huge, huge opportunity for everybody involved. I can't say it as well as the daughter of a Wasp says it. So we're going to play a clip of our special guest, Wasp Elise Stevens-Rohr, who is one of the main characters in our documentary and has become a dear, dear friend, as has her daughter, Carol Ann. So without further ado, here they are talking about the importance of the Wasp in the history books.
I think about it all the time. She's absolutely an incredible woman. You've always stayed involved with everything. You're very attuned to what's going on. What it did for me was make me apply it to my classroom. I said, if this is not in the history books, it will be in this classroom. And in my many years of teaching, I always had bulletin boards set up with things we had gathered from the convention. Somebody will say, what's that pin for? And I get a chance to go into a spiel on Fifi, designed by Disney to support the women pilots of World War II.
Oh,
It's true.
I have a wonderful daughter.
Get a lot of questions going. Then the teachers come and ask questions. And nobody had heard of it before.
I know.
And they do now. They ask about you all the time. How are you? That was my chance to spread the word. So I've been waiting really patiently for this documentary. I think it's going to be a wonderful thing that can be shared with the world.
I appreciate so much.
coming home. Your attitude about it, dear.
Okay, very nice.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
So I think we do have some comments and questions. If you three are okay, can we jump to the Q&A
Sure.
section now?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's do that.
So again, please put your comments and questions into Facebook. So Sonia says, Mattia, you make Boston proud. And then Kimberly writes, and I'm going to read this verbatim, Mattia, this is a part of Massachusetts history I was previously unaware of.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing this part of women's history as well. Women have always been a part of history, which you've all talked about. It's just that their participation has been made largely invisible in the dominant historical narrative. Fascinating, fascinating. Someone named Kazoo, I believe it's pronounced, asked if you could talk more about how you all have been raising funds so far for the making of the film.
I'll jump in. We have been raising funds over the course of the years on our crowdfunding platforms. We have an incredible fan base. We're so grateful to all of our donors, many of who are repeat. Because we do have a nonprofit fiscal sponsor, it is tax deductible. However, if you are interested in an investment opportunity or a large donation, email me, Hillary, HILARY, at thereddoorfilms.film, and we can share opportunities to participate in the film.
Super, thanks, Hillary. And since we are on Facebook Live, Mattia, can you talk a little bit about, social media has gone a little bit nuts with you all. So can you talk about the movement that has really resulted from your social media interactions?
I can't, no. We have an extraordinary group of our interns who have been really pushing our social media efforts. And I tell Hillary all the time, the only thing tangible when you're doing a documentary, and if you're on Facebook, is looking at the number of likes. So
Yeah.
every day, and it's been growing in leaps and bounds. And as Hillary has said, we have reached over 5 million. Our reach has reached, how do you say that, Hillary?
Yeah,
Over
5 million users in a month.
5 million users. And so it's been very exciting. And I think that what it does is support our efforts in trying to get this film made, because it has been a lifelong process for me. And those who have, like Hillary and Molly and you, of course, Jill, have been dedicating their time and their efforts to making this happen. It encourages us and it gives us that kind of psychological, emotional support to say, we know we're doing something good. I think we know we're doing something great. And I think that this film will be definitive in its approach to World War II, to women who contributed during World War II, and of course, to at the center of that, to our Wasp.
Definitely. And I would encourage everyone listening and watching to check us out on all of the social media platforms. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and that's all under Fly Girls. And then on LinkedIn, it's under the Red Door Films. So we don't have any more audience Q&A. So I have one more question and then we're going to wrap it up. Mattia, if it's at all possible for maybe all three of you can super quickly comment, what really is the importance of telling this story if it's something you haven't already said and doing it now?
Okay, I have to read this because it was so important, because the question is, why history matters. Why does their history matter? In doing research and in interviewing people like Beth Bain, Lieutenant Colonel, and others, I was directed to Gerda Lerner, who was a historian. And here I have to move this, okay. And she says it the best way. She says, history shapes our self-definition. It locates us in time and place and helps to give meaning to our lives. History can be the vital thread that holds a nation together. It gives us a personal identity. It legitimizes our culture. So what we're doing with Coming Home and Fight for Legacy is that it will illuminate how history can affirm or deny people's agency, depending on who writes that history, to whom it's taught, and how it's interpreted. And I think that's, to me, why this is so important. Okay, I'll stop there.
I want to see the president of the United States be a woman. And I think that the more films and television shows that show women powerful, confident, in charge, capable in the United States, that boys and girls will be able to see women as leaders and the leaders that they are. So,
and I think for me, what really comes home in the project is the notion of social change. And for me, one of the most compelling parts of the Wasp story is that these women never gave up. And they were not militarized. They were robbed by Congress, and that's another side point that's very interesting is how politics can interfere with legacy and success. So Congress robbed them of what the military had promised them. And the reason that they stepped in the 1970s to fight for their veteran status had more to do with wanting to protect and uphold the generation of women that in the 1970s had been let into the Air Force Academy. And so, and then again, we see the women coming back in the 1990s to fight for the right for women to fly combat missions. And then later on, fought for their fallen sisters to be properly honored in the Arlington National Cemetery. So what you see with the Wasp, these are not women by and large who considered themselves feminists with a capital F. These are not women who saw themselves as social activists. These were women who wanted to fight for their country, but they reluctantly became agents of social change because they saw that there were sustained ongoing problems with the discrimination against women. And no matter how many setbacks they had, no matter how there were campaigns, literal campaigns organized against them, they never gave up.
Yeah.
And for me, that has been a legacy that I've held in my own career ups and downs. And those, when you live a long life, you have those ups and downs.
Yeah.
And they fought and never gave up.
And I think too, for me to sum it up is in the quote, those who control the past control the future. So we have to look at the past and all its complexity and all in all of its details, and just really see and understand what was going on and why it was going on.
And as our champion at Kent State says over in the corporate giving office, my favorite, Terry, this is a story of achievement and adventure, and one that must be told. And it truly is uplifting and inspiring for everybody, no matter what country you're a part of, if you're a man or a woman. It's just so inspiring. These women overcame all odds, and they always say at the end of their interview, when we say, what's one question, Mattia, what do they always say? I'm tossing it to you.
Wait. What question? What
if they have one message for
one message.
Yeah, one message for kids.
That is, I think this is what you're saying, I hope, is that the message from the Wasp is that they want you to know that you can be anything you want to be, that your life is open to you. It's not restricted. And I think that's why they work so hard to, against, as both have said in the fight, and against all odds, they did what was unimaginable, completely unimaginable in the times that they were living in. And that's what they would,
And
Oh,
they did
sorry.
it extremely well.
And they, yeah,
As a
Yes.
pilot, let me tell you, they did it extremely well.
yeah.
So I think that's all we have time for. So first of all, I want to thank everyone who listened and who put in questions today. And special thanks to our amazing women, Hillary, Molly, and Mattia. And for those of you that subscribe to the newsletter, and if you don't, by the way, why don't you and get a hold of us, please. For those of you that subscribe to the newsletter, you already know that this is the first of a series this month. We are going to be interviewing amazing women, one a week throughout the rest of the month. So join us next Tuesday when Mattia and I will be interviewing an incredible force of nature named Carol Hobson. Carol is a really inspiring airline pilot with a super cool story that you'll have to come back next week to hear. And she is the author of a book that just got published. I've read it. It's amazing, called A Pair of Wings. It is a novel based on the life of, as Hillary mentioned, Bessie Coleman. If you don't know who she is, look her up. But more importantly, tune in next week and you'll hear about Bessie from Carol herself. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hillary for a closing message.
And before can we give a shout out to Callie, our wonderful intern, Callie Weissman in Cole? Go ahead, Hillary. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. We have a wonderful group of interns who support us in everything we do. They take my direction. They take Mattia's direction. They're amazing. Tell them what to do, and they do it.
We like them.
Yes, kind of like in the military. No, the final thing that we want to say is, as always, we are incredibly grateful to all of our servicemen and women, active duty, in the reserves, and our veterans. We are especially thinking of those who have lost family members in Afghanistan recently. And obviously our thoughts and prayers can't ease your pain or suffering, but we are thinking of you, and maybe that helps a little bit. And we have a message to you and to everyone from Wasp, Elise Stevens-Rohr.
And now it's left to me to say goodbye on behalf of all those who have gone before us. Blue skies, good luck, and happy landings.
Thank you all. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.